Inside Story Uganda. Real source of political updates.
Thank you, Chess. Good evening to our viewers. I welcome my brother Ken. He had just been texting us.
Yeah, good to have him here because he sends a message all the time. He's always watching. From the National Unity Platform, NUP, Secretary General David Laos Robongoya. Very nice to have you, sir.
Very pleased to be here. Good evening to the viewers. And congratulate the people who have performed very well in UNEB despite the numerous challenges.
And again, from the front line, from Kira Municipality, the Member of Parliament, from PFF, Shadow Minister for Finance, the Honorable Ibrahim Ssemuju Nganda. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening to colleagues who are here and those who are following.
Let's start with the 39 years of the national resistance movement. People have been discussing it from different perspectives. The people would want to discuss 39 years of President Yoweri Museveni. Others want to discuss it from the perspective of 39 years of the national resistance movement. For you, if you reflect back where you were 39 years ago, where you are today, what journey has it been for you?
You mean is who?
You, you Ibrahim Ssemuju Nganda.
The NRA captured power when I was 12 years old. I am now 51. I'm going to be 52 this year. It is the only government I have known in my adult age. First of all, one of the mistakes that people make is to think that the problems that we experienced as a country when the NRA was in Ruwero, that they are blameless. I have read Matayo Chaligonza's book on the war itself. Now late Lieutenant General Pecos Kutesa. The one of Museveni was carefully written. But both Chaligonza and Pecos Kutesa reveal that the time they were fighting in Ruwero, the 5 years, one of their tactics was to make life very, very difficult for the country. Pecos Kutesa especially speaks about a day they went to bomb a fuel depot in an industrial area called Agipu at that time. I think Agipu is no longer here. And he said there was no fuel. So the bombing didn't work because his intention was to bomb a fuel depot such that it begins burning Kampala. Chaligonza, on the other hand, says when they are fighting in Ruwero, he was operating around Namugonga, I think, with Kano Mande, Kano Kashiring, the late. And he said their duty was to make sure people got to sleep at 3 because they wanted to undermine the economy. So these fellows are to blame for most of the problems that Uganda faced, the terrorism they caused, the anarchy around that time. Then you need to read John Kazora's book, how they were
betrayed by my leader.
Yes, how they were killing.
Pecos Kutesa's is Uganda's revolution, 1979 to 2006.
2006? No,
yeah.
Not 2006.
I think so.
79, 1986, I think, something like that. I don't remember. I also read in Juba, some in Juba. But I have said many times, I respect people who went to fight in Ruwero. Maybe it is something those of us of this generation should have done, but we are cowards. People like Besigye who abandoned the well-paying job in Nairobi to go to Ruwero. When I was a journalist, I interviewed many of them, General Muntu and Tumukunde, Kazora, as soon as they completed their exams, final exams at Makerere. they looked for a way of joining Museveni and many others.
And they didn't wait for an invitation.
They didn't. In fact, Muntu, if you speak to him, because his father was a senior figure in UPC and a close ally of Obote, he was doubted when he went to Luwero. They thought maybe he was a spy. Your father is a very close friend of Obote, they are in government. What would motivate you to come and remove the government of your father? But their aspiration and the sacrifice they made was for a very good country that is governed well. And General Muntu kept preaching at us. He said the biggest mistake they made was to pursue one thing, change of government. And he said they never concentrated and gave as much energy and time to governance after the fall of that government they wanted to remove. He said as a result, the main achievement of removing the government was achieved. What was not achieved is the change of governance and making the country better. And it's the reason he abandoned NRM to go now to see where he is.
Mr. Bongoya, your party, NUP, and the broad opposition has been blamed for precisely what Ssemuju Nganda is talking about. They say the central focus is to remove, in your words, including yourself, to remove a dictator. The discussion about other issues of governance appear to be secondary. But number two is what Honorable Ssemuju also talks about. What appears to be the cowardice. If you look back, 39 years is not a short stretch. The question is, why haven't you stepped up? If you want to remove President Museveni, why haven't you stepped up stronger and actually challenged him and removed him 39 years later?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, NUP, the preoccupation of NUP is just not removing the dictatorship, but rebuilding Uganda, building a better country. That's why we've been talking about a new Uganda as our central focus. A new Uganda which offers equal opportunities for all citizens, a new Uganda where Ugandans feel that they have a sense of ownership of their country and they can determine their own destiny. But certainly you cannot build that new Uganda when you still have an obstacle, and that obstacle is General Museveni and his dictatorial regime. So it is important that the people out there know that our focus is just not on removing the dictator and then what? We've been talking about it so much and very deliberately about what we hope to do in what we call the new Uganda, and I think we've been very clear on that. And regarding the second question, you call it cowardice, but I think it's a question of strategy. You know, look at the successive governments that this country has had, each government bombing its way to power and, you know, getting bombed out of power when the time comes. And I think that's what General Museveni is waiting for, to be bombed out of power. But I think many people in this country have been very clear that then you're creating a cycle that will never end, because violence naturally begets violence and that kind of thing. So I think that's why many people have thought that the best thing now is to pursue a non-violent kind of struggle to be able to put an end to violence. Because according to the cycle of the present regime and the present establishment, you know, everything must be resolved through violence. And I think if you seek to put an end to that cycle of violence, you cannot use the same methods. And that is not to say that it cannot happen, because certainly if people are pressed as they are now, maybe some people may resort to that. But at least we've been very clear, and I think that has been the consensus amongst majority of the forces of change in this country.
Let me pick it from the first angle to your question, your answer to the first question. You say your focus is on creating a new Uganda where opportunity is equal.
Yeah.
Over the last, since yesterday, I think, over the last 2 days, social media has been awash with an NUP supporter called Kapere, who got an opportunity, fly to Dubai on a plane, fly back. So the story of that gentleman, Kapere, who is a comedian, and Mama Trump, his wife, it doesn't seem to speak to what you say, this is a denial of opportunity to everybody.
What do you mean? This was actually a private offer by our president given to this man, who by all means should not be struggling to get an air ticket because he's been a successful comedian, he's been in the arts and that kind of thing, but he's never had chance to even travel out of this country. So it's an opportunity actually being offered to him, but also to show the people out there that we are well-intentioned and that whatever little opportunities are there, we are willing to share them with many other Ugandans. So some of the things you see us do are simply symbols of what we would do if we had power. If we had power in this country, we would ensure that Ugandans have access to equal opportunities. For example, in terms of service delivery, in our manifesto, we talked about inclusive economic development. You see the injustices and the imbalances within the regions. Many people will tell you that we are seated on a time bomb in this country because of those imbalances. Money in the hands of a few. The other day, the IGG was saying that people who have access to public resources are about 30,000. Again, it's 45 or so million people. So money is concentrated in the hands of a few people, and those are the ones who have caused this country to be a laughing stock. We lose over 10 trillion shillings every year, according to the IGG again, due to corruption. And now if you're losing that kind of money, and it is going into just the hands of a few people, the ruling class, a small clique, then, I mean, how are you building a country? So those are some of the things we want to do. But again, to reflect on what you talked about, the 39 years of NRM, you know, I think we should judge the NRM on what they promised. They had the 10-point program. They promised to fight corruption, to bring democracy. They talked about fighting sectarianism. All these, I don't even know if they can go back and read about these points. And I mean, I don't know what they think when they read them, because they have since moved out from them and they're doing exactly the opposite.
The bigger question, Mr. Bongoya, is have you demonstrated that you're up to the challenge?
Absolutely, and I think that's why the people of Uganda have showed a lot of trust in us as the NUP, despite the regime investing massively, a lot of propaganda against us. I mean, you just tune into so many radio stations, TV stations, you find all sorts of state operatives attacking NUP, but the common people of Uganda know that for sure we represent their interests and we represent them. But, I mean...
They haven't delivered you into power?
And
or you haven't been able to wrest the power out of the people who hold it?
It is a process. It is a struggle. That's why we call it a struggle. That's why we don't call it, a meal. It's a struggle. That's why we are involved in a struggle. And that struggle, we are not in it alone. Right now, as we speak, Dr. Kizza Besigye is in detention. You see the condition he's in. That's part of the struggle. Our supporters are still stuck in different prisons across the country, being tried in military courts. Others disappeared without trace. So we continue to struggle in the hope that we shall be able to get there.
Mr. Fono-Pondo, let me come to you. Yeah, the framing of that question, is the bus still on track? And Rubongoya talks about the nature of the struggle against the NRM and makes reference to Dr. Kizza Besigye, who we made to understand is on hunger strike in prison because of his trial in the military court. Yesterday he appeared in court over a different matter. Is the bus still on track?
Yes, I think on this show, I could be the oldest by age. So I've lived in many regimes, and this one. This one in particular, I have been part of the engine building it. I can say without any fear of contradiction that the situation is better. Now, to go back to what you said, 39 years, very long. No, to us, duration depends on the tasks. If you look at the tasks of rebuilding Uganda in 1986, NRM would respond that 39 years still very short.
Tackling the tasks ahead was a campaign manifesto theme in 2006,
yeah,
I think.
39 years still very short because the task was huge. And with the support of Ugandans, both through elections and other forms, I want to believe NRM's journey is just beginning. It's just beginning. We're in the middle, actually. We're in the middle. We want to take Uganda for another century, inshallah. Now, Honorable Ssemuju cherry picks. Actually, if you read the book of Pecos, it says Uganda's Revolution 1979 to 86, the way I saw it, that's how he ends it. And he describes the type of people who joined initially. He gave 5 categories. Yes, there are people who could have had good jobs. Even Museveni had a good job. He had been the Minister of Defense. He was the Vice Chairman of the Military Commission. He was the president of a political party. Obote even called him to have a discussion. He could have opted to join Obote and live in comfort. He chose otherwise. So there are people who left their comfortable, what you call good jobs, maybe because they had borrowed money, they were indebted, they couldn't pay, and they thought they could run to the bush for a short time, get money quickly, go and repay what they borrowed. Some people you are referring to who left jobs actually were running away from creditors. And they thought by going to the bush, they would get money, they would come out quickly. And you saw, as soon as they came, many of them actually grabbed the houses, grabbed the money, grabbed the things, repaid their loans, and so on, and they are living comfortably. These are facts that you may not know, Honorable Ssemuju, and the world they may not know. There are people who were running away from the law. They had committed different offenses. But at the end of the day, there were substantive issues. Was the suffering in Uganda only restricted to Luwero? Absolutely not. I was a victim of having my shoes removed at the Owen Falls Dam because there was a permanent roadblock there by soldiers who would ask you, young people, women, people who are traveling in public means, kitambulisho na 100 kwa mkononi. That was a standard procedure on public roads at the roadblocks. Mabira, Owen Falls Dam, Magamaga, Busitema, and you can continue, you can count. Museveni and his group were not in Jinja. They were not in Toro, they were not in Busoga. The situation in the whole country had been turned into a war zone, a robbing zone, officially by government soldiers, asking you if you travel with a female, asking you to leave the female so that they can turn the female into their concubine for the night or for the day, and so on and so forth. Mr. Doichwale, who had run against Osinde Wangwor, was killed in a place called Katerema, in broad daylight, a parliamentary candidate. The wife of Mr. Sudo, the town clerk of Toro at that time, she's still alive in Mbari. Her husband was a DP from our village called Isiwa after Nganda. They suspected that her husband had probably joined rebellion. They went to her home and asked where the husband was. And she said, I don't know. They arrested her. They cut off her fingers. She's still alive in Mbale there. And there are many things like that. So there were reasons. And therefore, the question of fighting in Rwanda and fighting in Uganda was a question of strategy. If you cannot talk, what is left? The Rubongoyas and the Ssemujus cannot pick guns today, partly for 2 reasons. One, the environment allows civil discourse, and they can raise their grievances. Some of them will be attended to, some of them will be solved to their satisfaction. Others may not be, but the environment allows civil democratic discourse. Honorable Ssemuju is doing his 3rd term in Parliament. I am not aware of anybody from the opposition who has won a seat in Parliament, and NRM has made it difficult for them not to assume their seats. Not to assume their seats. Segirinya swore in, Segerenya was a member of parliament. He died an honorable member of parliament. When we took government in 1986, or NRM took government in 1986, we never made a promise that the people who have contributed to the war, if they make offenses, if they cause offenses, they will not be handled. To the contrary, we actually said nobody will be beyond the law. And therefore, if Mr. Besigye, you want to plead for, is suspected by the state of committing an offense or offenses, he will be arrested, he will be tried in the courts of Uganda as established by law. Now, if you have a dispute with the court-martial, mechanisms are available to challenge the jurisdiction, the competence, the authority of the court-martial. We want you to go and challenge. But they don't just come and say, oh, court-martial, your parliament where you sit is what created the court-martial, following the constitution. Go back to parliament, repeal, bring a bill to repeal the court-martial. If you succeed, a civilian will not be tried there. Let me just respond to the final one, which is Rovongwe, and many of them like saying that that is the bus still on track. Yes. The 10 points. The first one is re-establishing democracy, popular and participatory democracy. How else is Mrs. Honorable Ssemuju in Parliament? The 29 of the FDC people. How else is the 57 of... How else are we discussing if this is not establishing democracy? Where was this democracy before? No. Where was you made your point. I didn't interrupt you. I listened to you. No, I don't need your information. I could have given you information, but I chose to keep quiet because I wanted you to make your point.
It was your choice.
Point number two. Re-establishing security of the country and persons and property. Today, if somebody grabs your property, you have recourse to the courts of law. 3, defending the territorial independence and territorial integrity of Uganda. Is Uganda better in terms of national defense, territorial integrity of Uganda, or not? Point number 4 has skipped my mind, but point number 5, which is about the economy.
Was there an occupying force on any border of this country in 1981, 1986?
Anyone could walk in and out of Uganda. And that's the reason why northern Uganda, that's the reason why Western Nile, that's the reason why Western Uganda, the border with the Congo, was insecure.
But no country had claimed any portion of this country?
No, they don't have to claim part of your territory, but they can make it their compound or their toilet. And that's what many countries around us had done to Uganda. Point number five, building an integrated economy. Self-sustaining. Today in Uganda, look at our balance of trade between our neighbors and our trading partners. Go to any shop in Uganda, big and small. Look at the goods on the shelves. 60%, now coming to 70%, are goods produced in Uganda, most often by local materials from Uganda, which was never the case.
Let me go to Ken
which
Mutenyo.
Was never the case before NRM. And we can go on and on and on. So NRM is still on track. The 10-point program. There's no point in that program which the NRM hasn't implemented. You can say at 30%, 70%. 60%, but we have implemented all of them.
I'll put the other questions on the NRM to Dombo, but Ken Mutenyo, 39 years of NRM and President Yoweri Museveni.
Thank you very much, viewers. I come from a party that speaks the truth and wants justice for this country. And I was around 39 years ago. You see, what we should be debating is, or analyzing is, where should we have been, not where are we. Where should we have been after 39 years? That is the problem. This is a party that went to the bush after the 1980 elections. They are like somebody who is young and energetic, Somebody comes in here at the studio and grabs something and runs away, and you chase him and get him. In an ideal situation, what are you supposed to do? Get what had been stolen and give it back to the owners. And 39 years later, Mr. Opondo and my brother here, the DP is demanding its victory of 1980. That's where we should start from. 2, the perfection.
Doesn't
The
expire.
NRM is admired, in my opinion, for the perfection with which they tell lies, and they want people to believe. Point number 1. I don't know where my brother was. I was in Kampala. They came here, grabbed the power on 25th January 1986. For reasons everybody knows, for 39 years they've told lies that they grabbed the power on 26th. So they started on the basis of lies. They told us we are going to be here for 4 years. 4 years are now 39 years. So to me, a group that came and the job was to tell Ugandans lies, and because we were not like them, we chose not to go to the bush because we don't believe in that. We should put Uganda first. Look at the 10 original...
But Mr. Mutenyo,
Yes.
how would you really expect that they run and grab the Democratic Party is seated, its victory has been stolen, someone goes and claims it back, and you sit and wait for it to be handed back to you?
By the way, other than the 27, when they went to Luweero, they went in a DP stronghold. So a very big chunk of people who fought this war were DP members. And the reason we were given then was that an election had been stolen. Stolen by who? Stolen by the military commission. And they were part of the military commission. So,
But you were part of the first government.
let me
weren't you?
go, pardon?
You were part of the first government. weren't
The
you?
first government of Uganda?
The umbrella government of 1986.
Yes, for
Yes.
one simple reason. With us, we are not selfish. We think they needed advice. And that's why they did not go to UPC, to UPM, to CP. They went to DP, where there is what the late Sebana Chisto used to call what? Brain powers, to tell them how a country is governed. So let's go to the 10-point
So you
program.
received your slice of the victory.
No.
Yeah.
We didn't.
They grabbed, they got it back, brought you a portion and said... And,
No,
and-
they
and-
told
and-
us
and
you
you're
can
comfortable.
eat from the veranda, don't enter the dining hall.
And you
So-
accepted.
So we did not accept. The alternative was to do what they did, which we don't believe in. So let me go to the 10-point program. Point number 1 is democracy. Recently, there was a survey by Afrobarometer, which said that the provision of democracy in this country is at 32%. Can you be proud of 32% after 39 years? They went and copied the UPE from Dr. Ssemuju's 1986 manifesto, implemented it badly. Yes, it was in Ssemuju's manifesto. Look at the economy. Can we say it is an independent, self-sustaining economy? The viewers can tell us. Look at probably something they've tried to do is a combination of security and insecurity. Look at corruption. It's one of the 10-point programs. Can we say they have eliminated it? So let us talk about where this country should have been, not where it is now. Certainly nobody is proud of where we are.
Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, no one is proud of where this country is. And you, the NRM, wants to look back to where we came from, not where we ought to be. Are you still on track?
Charles, I want first and foremost to congratulate the pupils of Primary 7. Before the introduction of UPE, I want you to go back and find out how many children were sitting exams and were able to go to school. And 39 years later, how many children are getting out of primary, preparing to go to secondary, and the challenges that we must do together in order to build the country and go forward. Somebody will say perhaps you could have been very far. But what are the challenges? Who knew COVID would come? Who knew the challenges we have to overcome every day that we'll be working with thieves? President Museveni the other day said, if you chose to imprison the thieves, you might have nobody to work with. So in order to run a country, whether it would have been DP, whether it is NRM, whether they would want to go be in the future, Uganda should have been better. You know that there are so many things that have to be balanced in order to keep Uganda together as a country, in order to move together with a common agenda, in order for Uganda to be stable, that a country that was previously the biggest exporter of refugees is now the biggest host of refugees in Africa.
Biggest exporter of maize.
You can see that the other day somebody asked me and said, you people overpraise Museveni. You might even begin saying that the oxygen we are breathing is the one who gives us. I said, but the refugees who are running here, they leave oxygen in their countries. It's not carbon dioxide that they are running from. They leave their oxygen, but there is something here in addition to the oxygen here that the people yearn for from the neighborhood who are running for safety. Uganda has become a credible country in the international community. People have talked about Uganda receiving that is overborrowed. But who tells you that whoever goes to the bank gets lent money? Even the credit institutions assess the ability to pay. And they say, will this one be able to pay? And the credit institutions, which in previously could not lend Uganda money, are now lending Uganda money because they believe there is sanity here. Secondly, that Uganda will generate revenue in order to pay. And they look at our ability to service the debt. The Honorable Ssemuju in Parliament, every day of the budget, they receive a copy of the statement about the level of foreign debt and our ability to service it. And those macro lenders look at all those structures and say Uganda is being run credibly and it will be able to sustain but also service the debt.
There are many people, Honorable Dombo, who believe that you're saddling future generations with a lot of debt. And that a lot of that money borrowed is actually being lost to corruption, not to build the future that those future generations will enjoy to be able to pay back the debt.
What is true is that the ability to fight and get the corrupt, the institutional mechanism has been set up. The parliament has enacted very good laws, but implementation along the way has faced its own challenges. But when you go to Luzira and you look at how many people have been arrested, tried and convicted because of corruption, then you see that the institutions of governance are working.
But surely, Honorable Dombo, 39 years later, previously, yes, previous governments could be blamed for corruption, inherited the civil service. 39 years later, that excuse can't stand, can it?
You know, corruption existed even during the time of Jesus Christ. In order to betray Jesus, somebody became corrupted. So corruption was not invented in Uganda, neither was it invented during NRM administration. What is true is that the technology and the manifestation through which corruption comes have become obvious because, one, because of democracy. The Auditor General of Government audits the institutions of government and he reports. Right now, Parliament is considering the Auditor General's report. That is a democratic institution that has been set up in order to check on government. The Inspector General of Government recently reported the level of corruption that is taking place. That level of governance and transparency shows you how far NRM has gone. When you look at the democratic sphere, a few years ago, the Forum for Democratic Change were the leaders of the opposition in parliament. They were not defeated by NRM from that position in order for them to become, for NRM to become the leader of the opposition. It is a younger party which has been nurtured and nourished under the democratic space created by NRM that displaced the Forum for Democratic Change, and now governance, power has shifted.
And the Forum for
If any of these parties works very hard and they convince the population, just as they were able to displace the Forum for Democratic Change, even NRM can be displaced at the apex. The only situation is, if you watched the debate by the presidential candidates, President Museveni summarized it. He said these are jokers, because you can't be talking about national issues and serious matters, and then you begin raising issues, some of which my brothers here seem to be raising.
And before FDC, before NUP displaced FDC, FDC had displaced UPC and DP. Before that, would you say? Benjamin is watching us and says, please remind Dombo that Uganda sends a minimum of 500 youth daily to go for a new form of slavery in the Middle East. That's our version of refugees. If he's doubting that number, let him randomly go to Entebbe and see those people. After all, they are in uniform. Benjamin in Kampala.
Opportunities are here, but they chose the other one.
Wakabi Abiam Stephen, tuned in from Budapengo in Buzaya County, that's in Busoga, says Kennedy Mutenyu from the Democratic Party has raised a great concern of where the country ought to have been. Someone here says, yes, this one is watching us from Canada and says, we should play President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's introductory remarks at the presidential candidates' TV live debate, the one Honorable Dombo was talking about. Uganda as it was, not as it is, should have been from that DP man.
No.
Yes? This is what he has written.
The president said at that debate,
yes.
Please don't theorize. We discuss Uganda as is, not as ought to be.
Yes.
That's what he said.
And
that's the message.
Yes.
Run Uganda and discuss Uganda as is, not as ought to be.
As ought to be.
Because you are theorizing.
Kakoza Samuel from Luwero says the 39 years have been a fruitful one for this country in the field of education. We have seen school enrollment both in primary and secondary going up from one university to more than 30. Tertiary institutions have been built, etc. Greetings to Honorable Dombo. This is from Kakoza Samuel in Luwero. Martin Mushabe is watching us and says, when OO is properly switched on, he does a fantastic job. I'm enjoying his fine command of NRA's history of events.